All right, guys, welcome back to Middle Class Reactions. 1 week ago, as of 2 a.m. tonight, the Iran war started. A lot's happened. There's been a lot of huge updates. So we're going to watch The Wire. It's a 4-minute video. As always, I highly suggest the S2 Underground channel. If I remember, I'll link it down in the description below. And so we're going to watch this video. It's 4 minutes long. A lot of kind of overhead view of what's going on, and then we'll get into it in depth a little bit. So stay tuned. Let's get through this video, and then we'll talk about it.
This is The Wire for 2300 Zulu, March 6th, 2026. Precedence is routine. Information cutoff is 2200. Bottom line up front. Gulf War continues as the war of logistics becomes paramount. American bases throughout the Middle East continue to be targeted by Iranian forces. Terrorism concerns remain in the homeland as the war continues. Beginning with international events, in the Persian Gulf, the war continues as before, with Iranian drone attacks remaining constant throughout the region. Dubai alone has been averaging about 100 munitions being observed each day, nearly all of which are intercepted. Flights out of Dubai and Abu Dhabi have been able to increase somewhat as Iranian drone attacks have shifted to targeting American military installations and petroleum infrastructure around the region. Camp Arifjan and Ali al-Salam Air Base in Kuwait have been primary targets for Iranian missiles and drones, with significant targeting efforts taking place over the past 24 hours. Concerning American targeting efforts, bombings continue in Tehran and other major cities. Most military infrastructure throughout Iran has been destroyed, and President Trump has stated that no deal is sought, as only unconditional surrender is demanded. Analysts comment. This has been the blanket statement since the start of the war, but it's not entirely clear as to whom Iranian military forces are supposed to surrender to. Right now, any Iranian who wishes to stop fighting doesn't really have any way to declare that intent, as the United States and Israel rather confidently keep assassinating any sort of political leadership within Iran. It's not known who would even have the authority to sign surrender papers at this point. On the home front, in the United States, various counterterrorism and law enforcement agencies have been progressively increasing security measures at critical sites around the nation due to the increased potential for terrorism to take place within the United States as a result of the conflict in the Middle East. Northcom has raised the force protection posture at most North American military installations, with the Trusted Traveler program being temporarily halted while terrorism concerns are elevated. Analysts comment. Right now, the risk of Iranian government-sponsored combatants engaging targets within the homeland is fairly low. However, due to the prevalence of fifth-generation warfare being common in the modern world, what is much more likely is the co-opting of the Gulf War by other unrelated groups for their own gain. In short, there probably aren't that many Iranian sleeper agents in the US, but there are dozens of other groups seeking to make a name for themselves, or otherwise hijack national attention for their own gain. As always, predicting when and where security threats will pop up is hard, so increased vigilance is recommended. In Washington, D.C., Department of Homeland Security Secretary Noam has been transitioned to a new role, with Senator Markwayne Mullin from Oklahoma being slated to replace her within the next few days. Analyst comments for this wire. Of note, the satellite imagery company Planet Labs has imposed a 96-hour delay policy with their satellite imagery so as to prevent their imagery from being used for targeting purposes. As this is an American company, this makes perfect sense at first, as the modern world of commercial satellite imagery within the civilian space has the possibility to impact the war. However, this move is almost certainly not to prevent the Iranians from obtaining targeting data, and implementing this policy a week after the war began, and after American radar sites have been targeted, is akin to shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted. The Iranians are being fed targeting data of their own from the Chinese, who have been all too happy to highlight American losses with their own satellite constellations, which the United States does not control. And though it is always suspect due to the trustworthiness of the source, the Chinese have been focusing on highlighting specific targets for the Iranians to strike, and there's nothing the United States can do about it. Concerning the next phases of the war, indications and warnings are mounting of the operation shifting into the next phase. This morning, the USS Ford carrier strike group transited the Suez Canal heading south into the Red Sea. Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, the hospital that is the main medical hub for the CENTCOM AOR, confirmed that all prenatal care has been suspended until further notice, so that the medical center can have flexibility in treating combat casualties. On the political front, rhetoric concerning a potential boots-on-ground phase of the operation has sharply increased over the past few days, though no specific decisions have been made public. In Washington, absolutely zero sentiments indicate that the war will be over anytime soon, and combat operations throughout Iran are expected to remain constant over the next few weeks at minimum. It's been 7 days since the war began, and the USS Lincoln carrier strike group is still holding well outside the Strait of Hormuz, which is a solid indicator that despite the overwhelming strikes throughout the country, enough risk remains to prevent bringing a carrier into the line of fire more directly. The arrival of a second aircraft carrier in a few days may change this, but as of right now, the Iranians are able to strike American bases and petroleum facilities just enough to indicate that risks remain constant throughout the region. This concludes The Wire for 2300 Zulu, March 6, 2026.
All right, guys. So that's where we're at as far as an overhead tabletop view. Now, to break in a little deeper, one thing he mentioned there at the end is super important. How the Iranians are striking petroleum facilities. Just where I'm at in North Texas, over the last 72 hours, gases went up almost 80 cents. It's went from an average of like $2.20 to $2.30 to, in some places, $3.20. So in some gas stations, it's risen $1. On average, I'd say 75 to 80 cents. So we're already seeing the effects of this hitting the pump, which, not shocked. That's what happens when you have a war with Iran or anywhere in the Middle East. Generally, gas prices shoot up. Another thing that he said in there that's super important, we don't really have the missile defense systems for a long-lasting drone war that this is turning into. So this is something that's gone back ever since we started giving arms to the Israelis and to the Ukrainians first, then the Israelis. It really depleted our missile defense systems stockpiles. And I know Trump can come out and say that we're doing great and we have huge stockpiles. We don't. It's not true. And the few ways you can tell this. The U.S. government has denied to restock places like Qatar, the UAE, and Dubai. We're not refilling their stockpiles for our provided Patriot missile defense systems. We're pulling certain missile defense systems from South Korea and putting them in Israel, not in our U.S. bases in the region. We're putting them in Israel. Side note there. So what this is looking like, it's keying up, and I'm going to caveat this. I hope I'm wrong. I pray that I'm wrong. What this is looking like is going to happen is that over the next week or two, the Iranians are going to keep sending their cheap Shahed drones and making us use our missile defense stockpiles on them. We're going to run out of missile defense munitions, especially at our U.S. bases that are near them. And then they're actually going to be able to really strike us. And who knows, if they have ballistic missiles, if they have hypersonic missiles, all the good stuff that they do have, that's when they're probably going to start using them. We could really see some serious casualties. And what's the evidence of that? Well, like said in the wire here, the largest military hospital in Germany is getting ready for a lot of battlefield casualties. So they're prepping for something. What that something is, who knows? But they're prepping for something. Trump did come out, also mentioned in this wire, and originally the justification for this was that they can't have nuclear weapons, or they can't have the capability to make them. Then it went to they can't have ballistic missiles. Then it went to they can't have, or they can't be funding any groups like Hezbollah or Hamas or any of those guys. And now it is, well, we want complete and total surrender. So this is really, really gearing up for a long, drawn-out conflict. The other thing that you can look at, we're arming the Kurds. The same thing that we did in Iraq in 2003. Not the first time. 2003 wasn't the first time that we armed the Kurds, but we're following checkbox by checkbox the exact same steps that happened in 2003 in Iraq. If those of you who remember, those of you like me who've studied it, initially in Iraq, it started as an air campaign, and then Dick Cheney, now famously, came out and said that this is going to be a few-week operation, and then we started arming the Kurds, and then we sent in, it's like 200,000 troops, 150,000 troops, something like that, to Iraq, and then we were in the Middle East for 20 years. We're following step-by-step that same thing here. I really think that Donald Trump being surrounded by Marco Rubio and Mark Levin and those kind of guys, I really think he just got fed a bunch of lies. And I think in his mind that after the initial strikes and we killed the Ayatollah, that his bet was that Iran would want to negotiate and come to a ceasefire. Well, through the Italians, America went to Iran earlier in the week, or late last week. No, it was early this week. It was like Monday or Tuesday this week, and offered a ceasefire deal. Said, "Hey, we're ready to talk about a ceasefire." The Iranians said no. They've never done that before. That's the first. They always come to the table for a ceasefire. So I'm going to say, I hope I am wrong about this. I really, really hope I'm wrong about this, but I don't think I'm going to be. This is gearing up to be a long, drawn out process. The best thing he could do is claim victory and walk away. Say, hey, we killed the Ayatollah, we destroyed their military, we destroyed their navy, we're walking away. But Iran's got 92 million people in it. We just killed their religious leader. And even if 2% wanted to become a bunch of jihadi terrorists, that's 1.8 million people that are going to be digging in for a fight. So I don't think this is going to go anywhere good. China is now, according to multiple U.S. reports coming from the Trump administration, China's considering getting involved in this war. Now, to what extent, who knows? They're already giving the Iranians intelligence, but if they get actually involved in this war, say if a Chinese warship goes to the Strait of Hormuz, or some Chinese fighter jets come into Iranian airspace and shoot down an F-35. Now are we at war with China? So this could very quickly turn into a full-blown world war. Now, a lot of people are going to hear that. Oh, World War III, you're talking about World War III. It's got that possibility. Do I think it'll get that far? No, I don't think it will, because China plays the long ball. They play the 1,000-year game instead of the 4-year game that the Americans do, and I don't think that would be in their interest, but who knows? At minimum, what we're looking at is a really, really, really long and drawn out war with the people fighting us who hate us because we killed the Ayatollah, which is their religious leader. I'm not saying he's a good person. I'm not saying that we should defend it. I'm not saying any of that, but he was the religious leader for millions of Muslims, and we just killed him, which we've never done before. We've never killed a major religious figure like that. So we could be looking at a religious war, and not just a thing where we're getting fought because we're over there, but because we killed their religious figure. So this has the possibility to become insanely drawn out with a lot of casualties. So we're going to see. That's where we're at a weekend. I'm going to do another update at least on Friday of next week. I'm probably going to do one midweek coming up, or if something major happens. But that's where we're at. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on things. If there's any major updates, I'm going to put a video out. So just keep an eye out. Like, share, subscribe, do all the stuff you know you need to, and I'll catch y'all later.